Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down a procedure that's pretty common in the delivery room, the episiotomy. We're going to walk through every single detail, from why it's done to how it's performed, and exactly what the recovery looks like step by step.
All right, so here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll get into what an episiotomy actually is and when it might be necessary. Then we'll look at the different types of cuts, all the prep work, the procedure itself, both the incision and the repair, and finally, we'll wrap up with aftercare and recovery.
Okay, first things first, let's get a handle on the basics. Before we can really dig into the procedure, we've got to be clear on the anatomy and the medical terms we'll be using. So this whole procedure happens in a really specific and crucial part of the body, the perineum. As you see here, it's that area of tissue and muscle right between the vaginal opening and the anus. It's designed to stretch an incredible amount during childbirth. So then what exactly is an episiotomy? Well, simply put, it's a surgical cut, a deliberate one, made in the perineum. And the whole point is to make that vaginal opening a bit larger to help with delivery and, hopefully, to prevent a more chaotic, jagged tear. Now, this is where it gets really interesting because this procedure isn't just about making things go faster. Sure, shortening the second stage of labor is one reason, but the main goals are actually about long-term health. We're talking about protecting the pelvic floor, avoiding those really severe, unpredictable tears, and making a clean cut that's much easier to repair and might just heal better than a spontaneous one would.
Okay, so when is this actually necessary? Let's get into the specific situations where a doctor might recommend one. This decision really comes down to what's happening with both the mother and the baby during labor.
So if we're looking at it from the mom's side of things, it might be done to prevent a really bad tear if the perineum isn't stretching enough. It can also be a key step to make the delivery safer in more complex situations, like if the mother has diabetes, high blood pressure, or is delivering twins or more.
And then, of course, there are reasons that have everything to do with the baby. If the baby is in a tricky position, like breech, or if there are signs of fetal distress, an episiotomy can speed up the delivery. It's also sometimes considered for very tiny, premature babies to lessen the pressure on their heads, or for particularly large babies.
It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. There are actually a couple of different ways to do an episiotomy. And the big difference is the direction of the cut. That choice can have a real impact on the procedure and the healing process.
And really, the big difference comes down to one thing, the direction. A median or midline incision goes straight down, from the bottom of the vagina toward the anus. A mediolateral incision, on the other hand, is made at an angle. It goes from the vagina out toward the mother's right or left side. And this diagram, it just lays it all out perfectly. You can see it right there, the straight path of the midline cut heading right for the anus, and then the angled path of the mediolateral one. That angle is intentional. It directs the cut away from the rectal muscles to help prevent any complications there. Okay, so just like with any surgery, the prep work is absolutely key. You can't just jump in. So let's take a look at the specific gear they need and the first steps they take in the delivery room. A whole sterile kit gets set up and ready to go. You can see the list here. You got your anesthesia tray, a speculum to help with visibility, different kinds of forceps, those special blunt tip scissors for the cut, and of course the needle holder and the suture material, in this case chromic catgut, which is a type of suture that the body absorbs on its own. Everything has to be sterile and laid out just so. And here are the steps they take before anything else happens. First, they check the lighting, make sure all the gear is ready. Then, and this is so important, they explain everything to the mother to reassure her. After she's in the right position, the medical staff goes through the full sterile protocol. Masks on, scrubbing in, gowning, and gloving up. Only then do they drape her and clean the area. Okay, now for the main event. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the procedure itself. We're going to break down how they give the anesthesia, how they make the cut, and the very careful process of repairing it afterward. Timing, as they say, is everything, and that is definitely true here. The cut isn't just made randomly, it's performed at a very precise moment. It happens when the baby's head has crowned, which means it's visible, and stretching the opening to about 3 or 4 centimeters, and it's not slipping back in between contractions. All right, step 1, numbing the area. First, the practitioner puts their fingers in to protect the baby's scalp. That's priority number 1. Then the needle goes in, and after a quick check to make sure they're not in a blood vessel, they inject a little bit of the anesthetic. After that, they redirect the needle left and right, kind of like a fan, to make sure the whole area is thoroughly numbed. And this image here gives you a perfect look at how that's done. You can see the path of the needle as it infiltrates the tissue, getting that whole area ready for a painless incision right when the baby's head is crowning.
So, they let that anesthetic kick in for about 7 minutes or so. Once the area is good and numb, it's time for the incision. And again, notice that 2 fingers go in to act as a shield for the baby's head. Then, with those blunt-tipped scissors, they make one clean cut, about 3 centimeters long, in whichever direction they've chosen, median or medial-lateral.
And check this out. Here you can really see what we're talking about. Look how the fingers are right there, creating a physical barrier between the scissors and the baby's head. It's a simple but crucial move to make sure only the perineum is cut and the baby is completely safe. Okay, so once the baby and placenta are safely delivered, the next job is the repair. This is a really careful, layer-by-layer process. They start by finding the very top point of the cut inside the vagina. Then they stitch up the vaginal wall, then the muscle layers underneath, and finally, they close the skin. These are usually absorbable stitches, so they just dissolve over time. The last step is a final check to make absolutely sure no stitches have accidentally gone where they shouldn't.
All right, we're on the home stretch. But the job isn't done without last stitch. The aftercare and the guidance given to the mother are just as important for smooth recovery.
So what happens next is really a two-part thing. First, there's the immediate care. The site is cleaned, treated with betadine, and covered with the sterile dressing. A full report is written up. And of course, they make sure the mother is comfortable. But then comes the teaching part, giving her clear instructions on how to care for the wound at home, what kinds of food can help with healing, and most importantly, what signs of infection to watch out for.
Really understanding the why and the how behind a procedure like this is incredibly empowering. It allows you to be an active participant in your own care. So after going through all these details, it really makes you think, doesn't it? What are the key questions you should be asking your doctor or midwife about this before you're ever in the delivery room? Because being informed is truly the best way to prepare.